What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bucket of Chum, the Shark Movie Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Captain Steve, and we are concluding Attack of the Sequels, the sequel month, with Deep Blue Sea 3, directed by John Pogue from 2020. Yeah, some of you might be surprised to know that they made 3 of these movies. Now, how do they compare to the first one? Well, I did a review on the second one last year, and I was less than impressed with it. I thought it was okay, and I think maybe it was a little bit better than I originally remembered, but at the same time, it does not compare to the original one. But let's get into this and see how this stands up to those two. So let's get into the Letterboxd plot synopsis. Dr. Emma Collins and her team are spending their 3rd summer on the island of Little Happy, studying the effect of climate change on the great white sharks who come to the nearby nursery every year to give birth. Along with the last 2 inhabitants of this former fishing village, their peaceful life is disrupted when a scientific team, led by her ex-boyfriend and marine biologist Richard, show up looking for 3 bull sharks who we soon learn aren't just any bull sharks. Oh god, that was a struggle the last couple sentences. Jesus. But it has an average rating of 2.3 stars on Letterboxd, which I think is probably a little bit higher than the last couple of movies we've watched this month. But before we do get into any more of it, I just want to do some trivia on this movie. So director John Pogue, who has also directed Eraser Reborn and Quarantine 2, so I guess sequels to movies that were like somewhat successful. I don't know if Quarantine was necessarily a successful movie because it's a remake of the Spanish movie Wreck. But Eraser is the sequel to a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from, I want to say it's like the late 90s, like maybe 96 or something like that. I don't remember much about it because I always get it confused with another movie called The Sixth Day that he also did, which I also don't know what it's about, but they both kind of look the same to me. But yeah, so I guess he just has a thing for doing sequels to movies, but let's see how this one works out for him. This is also a direct sequel to Deep Blue Sea 2. Now, Deep Blue Sea 2, I don't remember if they directly connect it to the first one or not, but this one is like a direct, like the events that happen are directly correlate with the second one, more or less. And we do get an explanation for this a bit later on in the movie. And before we get into the plot of this movie, if you're enjoying the show and you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/bucketofchum. Each month I do a new exclusive episode, and sometimes I do some trailer reacts or release stuff a little bit earlier than you would on all the main feeds. So make sure you go check that out. It's just $2 a month for the Your Catch tier. And if you can't do that, if you can leave a 5-star rating or review wherever you're listening or watching the podcast, that would be greatly appreciated. But now, there's nothing else left to do other than just watch some dumb people die by super enhanced sharks, and let's dive in. Right away, we see 3 shark fins heading towards this fishing village that you heard described in the plot synopsis. So when they say an island, it's not even really an island. It's all of these little huts, basically on stilts, in the middle of the ocean. I guess there's water around it that they can kind of stand in, but basically everything's connected by like little bridges, like whether they're just like wooden bridges or like rope bridges or whatever. So it's actually kind of a cool set. When we do zoom out, though, we can tell this is very much CGI, but all the stuff when we're actually on the ground, so to speak, is all practical sets, and it looks really good. Right off the bat, even these shark fins, they're CGI, but they are leaps and bounds better than the second movie already. I was very impressed, and this movie only came out 2 years after Deep Blue Sea 2 did, but the effects are like at least 10 years apart, in my opinion. And in some areas, a little bit later on, it does get a little bit more dodgy, but overall, what you see in the beginning, you can kind of expect that amount of quality throughout the rest of the movie, which is awesome. But immediately after saying that and thinking that when I'm watching the beginning of this, the title card comes up, and it is one of the worst title cards I have seen for a movie. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with this title card. Just the font and everything. It looks like somebody made this in a Windows program from like the late 90s. I don't understand it. I understand, like, you know, this was probably a bit lower budget, and they did spend their money on much better things, but I feel like somebody could have given somebody like $20 to just improve this a little bit. Like, good God. After that, we're introduced to our leading lady, Emma, and she's diving around some coral reefs with this guy named Shaw. And I guess they're kind of doctors or like researchers that are studying this great white nursery. and all the impact that like climate change and pollution has had on these sort of areas, on all the wildlife and whatnot. So they're kind of just filming the coral and whatnot. And then they talk about how the sharks return to this spot every year. And then we get some stock footage of sharks. Although I'm actually not entirely sure if it's necessarily stock footage. They may have shot this for the movie, because so far the underwater photography looks really good. So, like, yeah, they spent some time and money and obviously had people who really knew what they were doing, and I don't know, probably had experience doing this before, because this looks incredible. Like, it looks, I mean, it's sort of weird to say, but it looks like a real movie, right? Like, this could have been released in theaters. Maybe not like a big Hollywood budget, but like, it would have done decent, I think, because it's really not that bad. And Emma is doing all this because we learn that her father believed in studying apex predators like people, because whatever is affecting them can also affect us. So I guess that's sort of her justification for studying the climate change on, well, how it affects animals and whatnot. But I guess the dad was like, it sounded like he was in the Navy or something, or the Army, because it sounds like Shaw worked with him before. I don't know, maybe they did a deeper dive into this conversation when I wasn't listening, but yeah, she's doing this because of her dad. Shaw knew her dad. We don't really get too much else into that, so it's not, I feel like it's not super important to get into. But as they continue, this great white shark approaches them, and she tells Shaw to just keep filming, because the shark like kind of stops in front of her, and she starts to like redirect it a little bit. And then this whole time they're apparently doing a live stream, so he's got this GoPro and he's filming the whole thing. And she's like, yeah, you just gotta know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And then immediately after that, this shark just like slams her into some coral reef and then swims off. And so she starts to bleed a little bit, and Shaw sees this, so he immediately gets her out of the water and back onto the docks. And when they're up there, she finishes signing off on this live stream or whatever they're doing. And so this is where we learn a couple things, that she's a doctor, and this guy Shaw worked with her dad, and he's like giving her the whole speech like, oh, you got to be more careful around these sharks, it's scary, blah blah blah. And she's like, nah, it's, you know, sharks are gonna do what they do and they're not that bad, and all that typical I was gonna say nonsense, but it's actually true stuff. So yeah, she goes on to like, sharks aren't as dangerous as people make them out to be, and like, she was pretty safe for the most part. And I mean, really, if that shark wanted to kill her, it would have, and it didn't. It was obviously just sending a message. And like she said, this is like some sort of nursery, so maybe they're just getting protective over that. Like, no shit. They go to their like warehouse, shack, research center, whatever you want to call it, and they meet the rest of the team, where we meet Maya and Penn, I believe his name is. And of course, they've got all this like techie stuff, but it doesn't look outlandish. Like, it looks like a realistic setup for this type of environment. It's not over the top. Like, I felt like Deep Blue Sea 2 tried to go a little bit over the top with their equipment, like make it somewhat futuristic, but not at the same time. Whereas this one just feels like very standard, but realistic, and kind of fits the tone of the movie and everything. I gotta say, like, everything working together here, the cinematography, the set design, even costume design, like, all of this is working very well together to make like a cohesive looking and cohesively told story and movie. After that, we briefly go onto this boat, which we find out later is Emma's ex-boyfriend Richard and this guy Lucas. And so they've basically been hired by this company to hunt down these bull sharks that have escaped. And so they have a dead one on the boat already, but I guess this was like the mother. So the 3 shark fins we saw at the beginning of the movie are all of her little babies. So all those little baby sharks that we saw in Deep Blue Sea 2, we got 3 of them here. We don't know that yet. They haven't told us that in the movie. Spoiler alert. And Lucas asks Richard how they plan on finding the other 3 sharks now that the mother is dead. And then Richard is like, well, she was a good mom, so she would take her to where all the food is, like an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I'm like, okay, so they just immediately start heading to this island that has like 8 people on it. I'm like, how is that an all-you-can-eat buffet? Like, there's Emma, Penn, Shaw, Maya, and then the 2 last villagers. So there's 6 people on this island, unless I'm missing somebody. Although we will find out soon enough that Richard is a fucking idiot. So, I mean, I guess just right from the get-go, we should have known he's an idiot. Good God. So then we cut to Emma and all of the people, and they're all gathered around having dinner together and doing shots and whatnot. And then we kind of just get to see and know these research people a little bit better. And then outside, we can kind of just see a couple of these shark fins swimming around this island or huts, whatever you want to call it. And then the next day, they see a boat approaching, and then they go to meet and greet them. And it's Richie. It's Richard, Emma's ex-boyfriend, sex buddy, whatever. And she introduces him to the members of her team he hasn't met before. He knows Shaw. They've met before. And Shaw does not like this guy. Because Shaw is a brilliant fucking man. Actually, I think Shaw is probably one of my favorite characters in this movie. This man is badass. And then he finally tells them that he's been hired to look for these bull sharks because they killed a bunch of people up on a river, which we know isn't true. And then, of course, we get the whole, like, oh, there were sharks found in a river, and it's like, bull sharks can survive in a river, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't listened to the show, I've done a lot of movies with bull sharks, and the thing with bull sharks is they can survive in, like, fresh water for a bit. Something to do with how their kidneys process something, or something like that. I can't exactly remember. But every time they do this in a movie, we have to have somebody be like, well, how does it do that? And it's like, well, bull sharks can survive in fresh water, like, every single time. Which I get. It's only because I watch so many of these movies that it annoys me, because honestly, like, the general public, yeah, they're not going to know this, so they need this line in the movie, but this is a minor complaint for me. This shouldn't bother anybody else. It's literally probably just me. Oh my god, Taylor Swift was right. I'm the problem, it's me. And of course, Emma is very skeptical of all of this because she's like, this isn't typical shark behavior. Richard's like, oh yeah, we know, we want to figure out what's going on too. But like, he obviously already fucking knows exactly what's going on here. So they start looking at the computer, and I guess they're keeping a record of all of the sharks that kind of come into this area. They have like these beacons underwater that kind of gives like a sort of 3D sonar scan of what's going on down there. So they're keeping a record of all the sharks and marine life that come in and out of there. And they haven't seen any bull sharks in like 3 weeks or something like that. So Shaw's like, well, I guess that's all settled. Richard, you can go now. And I'm like, yeah, I really like Shaw because I agree. Richard already sucks. And it's like, you don't even really know why. You can just kind of sense that he sucks a little bit. Along with his partner, Lucas, the both of them just suck. And like right off the bat, when they walk into a room, you're like, these two suck. I'm going to go to a different room. So Emma starts walking them back to the boat, and Richie asks her to come on board for a couple of drinks or whatever. And she's suspicious as to why Richard, this highly educated man, has been hired to just do some shark hunting. So he starts showing her around the lab on his boat, and then we learn that her dad died, and then when that happened, he took a job in Sydney, Australia. And so now, like, it's no wonder Shaw hates this man. And then, because this comes about because Richie's like, hey, do you ever think about us? And she's like, yeah, sometimes I do. And then I remember when my dad died, you took a job in Sydney, so we're exactly where we need to be. And I was like, damn, okay. I have to say, actually, Emma is really great, too. Actually, shout out to the whole cast of this movie, because there's not one person in here where I'm like, they're a bad actor. I kind of think everybody did actually a really good job. And that's not something I say very often in a lot of these movies, but, like, even, like, the characters I hated, like, they're acting-wise, like, they played those parts really well. So, yeah, the acting is so far pretty great. And then this is where Richie finally tells her that he's working for some pharmaceutical company, and then he tells her to stay out of the water until they're done doing their thing. He was like, yeah, you need to stay out of the water because we have a job to do. And she's like, yeah, well, I have a job to do too, so fuck you. And I'm like, yeah, if you like really actually cared about her and you knew what was going on, you'd be like, hey, you should stay out of the water because these sharks are super dangerous. And or, you know, obviously he can't tell her the full truth, but like, come on, Richie, don't be stupid. So she starts, like, looking around the lab or whatever, and as Richie is, like, kind of staring at her, like, his face gets super serious when she turns away, because he's not letting in all the truth. He has, like, this, like, window in this lab, and it's, like, beneath the water, and one of the sharks just swims right by the window. These are one of the sharks they're looking for, and it just swims by the window. I'm assuming this is one of the sharks they're looking for, or it could have just been one of the great whites, but I feel like it's implied that it's one of the bull sharks they're looking for, and Richie's just dumb and apparently can't find them when they're right outside the boat. But we have established Richie is a bit of an idiot, so this is suiting. This fits, actually. Later on, Emma goes back diving as Maya keeps an eye on what sharks are around her, and she's placing more of these beacons and sensors for that sonar thing so they can see like a wider area and cover up some blind spots or whatever. And then Richie and his crew are also out there looking for the sharks. Then they start heading into deeper water because they think that's a good idea. And then they split up, also because they think it's a good idea and because they're in a fucking movie. So naturally, we need to do this. And then Emma is going to put in the next sensor when she comes across 2 sharks with bites taken out of it. And I guess they were great whites. And she starts to panic and radio in what's going on. And then Richie comes up behind her and scares her. Like, what? This seems to be a theme in the last couple of movies I've watched this month, too, is people sneaking up behind people underwater without getting their attention first. Like, good God. Like, hey, there's dangerous sharks in here. Allow me to scare the shit out of you and almost get stabbed. And then Richie's like, oh, you should stay out of the water, blah, blah, blah. And all of this is just through, like, muffled voices. We can't really hear too well what they're saying because they have their masks on and, like, they don't have the masks mic'd up. So it's fine. Like, we don't really need to hear exactly what they're saying. But we can tell that Richie is giving her shit for being in the water because he's too stupid to actually prevent this properly. Because, again, Richie is dumb. I just wanted to make that very clear. Richie is stupid. Although apparently he's a brilliant scientist, but just sucks at doing everything else in life, I guess. And then over Maya's radio, she starts to tell her that there's bull sharks around her now, so they start to swim off carefully. And then they think that they see another one of the crew coming up to meet them, and they see them coming towards them, and he's got one of those personal underwater scooters, and they're heading towards him, but then he kind of shoots past them because there's only half of him left. This half body just swims past them with all of his intestines spilling out and whatnot. Because, I mean, basically, he's just half the man he used to be. Oh my god. It looked pretty cool, though. The effects seemed somewhat practical, or if it was CGI, it was done well enough that none of it bothered me. It was really well done. So, I mean, so far in this movie, we've got bikini babes, buff dudes, because we kind of saw Emma in a bikini earlier. I think she was like washing herself off because she was coming out of the seawater. So they incorporated that scene because in each one of these movies, they have a scene with a woman all wet in her underwear because the first one did it. So now every other one has to have that. But this one actually made sense because she's like, I just got out of the ocean, so I'm going to rinse that off and then go and do whatever. Made sense. I mean, is it gratuitous? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Also yes. So everyone gets to the surface, and Emma confronts Richie about the sharks. Again, says they aren't behaving like normal sharks, and they shouldn't be able, especially bull sharks, shouldn't be able to take down a great white shark. Is that true? I don't particularly know, but I feel like we've all built up this image of the great white shark being this enormous predator, so there's nothing that can take it down, which is probably why when people started seeing dead great whites, washing up on beaches with bites out of them, they're like, oh my god, the megalodon is back. And then it's like, oh no, the killer whales are doing it. They're eating the livers. Yeah, in case you didn't know that, just to kind of tie this into this month's Patreon episode on Orca, killer whales will target the sharks and basically just pick their livers out. But yeah, so great whites aren't the big bad predator of the ocean. It's the killer whales. Which, I mean, is probably because they're smart and they are starting to realize that, like, oh man, humans are taking us out of the water. Like, we got to start just fighting everything back. Now that we see that, we're probably like, yeah, we should probably just leave them alone. They seem all right. Let's let them be. Which, yeah, you should. Fuck. Am I going to go on a rant about SeaWorld now? No, I'm not going to do it right now. But, ugh. My God, the ADHD. Full force today. I don't even know where I am right now. Oh, right. And then, so Richie's response to Emma saying, like, these are not normal sharks. Like, what the hell? So he explains that this company has hired him to perform a neurological examination because now he says he believes environmental and climate change is affecting them, which we know is bullshit. He knows is bullshit, but that's the story he's deciding to go with. But if this is what you thought or is the story you're telling people, why didn't you just tell her earlier and be like, hey, listen, they actually hired me because these things are like super crazy. So like it's way worse than I kind of let it on to be. And then he could have done that without revealing what he's actually fucking doing. But no, Richie's a goddamn idiot and can't do anything right. Emma decides, though, that her team and her are going to help Richie, despite Shaw, like, heavily objecting to this. So she asks the nearby techie dude, Penn, I think his name is, or whatever, to run a trace on this, like, highly complicated tracker device. So when they were in the lab earlier on Richie's boat, he showed her this, like, tracking thing. We're going to learn at some point that basically these sharks kind of attribute this tracking signal to their mother, because when they were born, it was on the mother. So they're kind of like imprinted on it, but not imprinted in a creepy way like Jacob was to Bella's daughter in fucking Twilight. Remember that? The fourth one where it's like, oh yeah, I'm attracted to your daughter. Nope, that's a baby. Please don't. Please don't do that. And so immediately after telling this dude to track this signal tracker or whatever, Richie and Lucas come into their lab and tells everyone that they have a plan. And so they want to use some like submarine drone thing to mimic a seal and distribute chum or whatever. And I'm like, you could probably just use it to distribute the chum, no? And it would come. I don't think you need to have it mimic a seal. But what, I don't know. What the fuck do I know? Richie and Lucas, they're the geniuses. Shouldn't question these two, goddammit. And so they try to tell Emma and Meyer what they're all doing tech-wise, and then they get mad at him for being condescending, and then Maya even talks to him in Japanese and calls him an old granddad or something. Because, yeah, the way they were doing it, they're like, oh, ladies, I don't know if you're going to understand this because you're young and women, but but yeah, they basically just school him because they're way smarter than these two are. Because Richie and Lucas are dumb, in case I have not been clear about that in this episode so far. They are stupid. I also don't like them. And then Shaw notices something in one of their belts, and they pull out these, like, cartridges that they have for their spear guns or whatever, and they're basically explosives. And then Shaw is like, well, you should probably be careful, because if you shoot one of those at the legs at one of these huts or whatever, like, this whole village is fucked. Because, again, this whole village is basically just on stilts, so now we have these explosive things that are going to collapse buildings at some point. I mean, probably. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that won't happen. But Lucas assures us that his men never miss. So he's basically like Freddy Rodriguez in Planet Terror. I never miss. They all go into the water with this seal drone. It doesn't look like a seal. It just looks like a drone, but underwater. And I guess it's supposed to be mimicking a seal. And it starts to drop a bunch of chum in the water, and it attracts some of the smaller sharks, and some of them are just plain staying away. Like, there's a bunch of them they notice on the radar that are kind of just sitting on the bottom, like, even with the blood in the water, so it's very weird. So then Spin, this techie dude, is setting up some communications thing and tracking the tracker device. And then we have time to listen to Maya and Emma talk about how Maya has a crush on Spin. Oh boy, I hope they get together. What a great love story this will be. And then back in the water, one of the bull sharks is headed towards the divers and then ducks away into a cove. So Richie is like, well, I'm near there, so I'll handle it. Yeah, Richie, go for it. Fucking go for it, buddy. Let me know how that goes. And then Emma and Shaw get on the docks. Emma shoots the shark with a dart just as it's biting down onto Richie, but then it sinks to the bottom with Richie in its mouth. And so she has to go in, pretty much pry this mouth open a little bit and set Richie free. So it basically was going to chomp down on him, but then Emma saved his ass because he fucking missed with one of his explosive dart things. Even though Luke is like, oh, my men never miss. And I guess technically Richie's not one of his men, but I mean, he kind of is right now. So yeah, y'all fucked up. They manage to get Richie back onto the dock, and then he tells Lucas to get the shark out of the water and onto the boat as he's there bleeding. And then Emma helps get him out of his wetsuit, which was made of wire mesh. That's why the teeth didn't go through, because he came prepared. Also why he's not dying of blood loss. But so she starts to wash off his wounds, and she's like in her bikini top, and he's like got no shirt on, and then it's like, oh, the sexual tension, just unreal. But they don't do anything because, there's been death around them, probably. And then Emma starts insisting on seeing the shark that they brought onto their boat. So as much as Richie probably wants it, there's no hanky-panky for him. Not before he dies. Then we see one of the last like local fishermen trying to reel in a fish, but it gets caught. So he dives into the water to try and unhook his line, and then a shark swims up to him just as he's readying his knife, and then we just cut away. Oh, do you think he survived? No, he's dead. He's super dead. And Emma and Richie start to investigate the shark that they tranquilized, and then Emma is asking questions about it that I'm sure Richie probably already knows. And then the fisherman's wife calls out to her husband's boat, and she's about to jump into the water after him. But then Emma comes and stops her. And so they tow this boat back to the docks, and then they start to reel in the net that he had set out. And then we can just see his severed arm come up onto the net. So yeah, he's definitely dead, unfortunately. And after this, we see Richie and Lucas start to have like some sort of cryptic conversation, and Lucas asks like what he thinks Emma is going to do if she finds out, and Richie says like, "Oh well, it's none of your concern," but Lucas seems pretty concerned. So I think whatever is going to happen, don't trust this man because he is sketchy as shit. Which I don't. Richie, you dumbass. But back in the lab, Emma and her team are talking with Spin, and he's showing them where this tracker has been. And so this is where we learn that this shark was from the underwater lab in the second movie. So they actually do tie this into the previous movie, which they didn't need to, but they did, and it's fine, and it works. And then Emma confronts Richie saying that, these sharks are altered, and they escaped from this facility, and he's surprised that she knows this. He has no idea how she knows this, but I'm like, well, just come clean, dude. Like, she's found out, obviously, so. But then the boat starts rocking. They go downstairs, and the two bull sharks are smashing into the window of this boat. And then Lucas tells the other men to kill the shark. And so the men point their explosive rounds recklessly. And Shaw is like, hey, fucking watch it. Like, what are you doing? Because they're trying to shoot these sharks as they're swimming around this village. And again, almost hitting the village. Even though these guys are the ones that never fucking miss. They've missed a lot so far. They're not very fucking good. Richie and Lucas decide to then dangle the shark that they have caught over the side of the boat and then point like a spear gun at it or something. And then the two sharks that are left in the water recognize this and start leaving the boat alone because they recognize what a weapon was. He did also tell the sharks to fuck off, but I mean, I don't think that's what they were responding to. I think it was the pointing at their sibling, pointing the gun at their sibling that really did it. But yeah, in this lab, Emma grills about the sharks, and like, we now connect this to the first movie as well. So he talks about how this whole thing started with experiments on Makos for Alzheimer's, and then Durant, the scientist business dude from the first movie, tried to turn it into like human intelligence or blah blah blah. But yeah, so we actually connect this to like the first two movies, which again we didn't need to do, but it's like, oh okay. And I actually kind of feel like this belongs in this world, so I kind of appreciated that. They actually did like a little bit of world building, which they didn't need to do, but it still fits in, and I'm fine with it. But as Richie is describing these like science experiments, he's very much into it. So this is why he's working with the pharmaceutical company. It's because he wants to kind of continue this research. So he doesn't want to just kill the sharks. Like, he wants to study it and then kind of take this research even further. Again, because he's fucking stupid. So again, this previous dude, Durant, trying to make the bull sharks smarter and then make humans smarter. So Richie is like, yeah, no, we got to do this, man. We got to get on board with this. And then he tries to convince Emma to get in on this. But like, good God. And this is also where he reveals that he's been setting off the tracking device, which drives the offspring crazy because they've imprinted onto the sharks. And I don't think Lucas knows this. So Richie has been using this kind of behind his back to find the sharks. I guess so that Lucas doesn't do anything stupid like kill them or whatever, because I think that's his main goal, is to kill the sharks to kind of cover up, well, basically cover the company's ass, more or less. That's basically his plan. And then I guess they have Richie there to actually find the sharks, but not really tell him what's going on. So yeah, they're just a bunch of skeezy bastards, and Richie fell for it because he's stupid. So she stormed off the boat now, and he's following her on the docks, and he's just like pleading with her to like join this stupid cause that he's on. And then she just punches him in the face, and Shaw gives a big old smile as they walk away. Mwah, so good, and Richie deserves it. I wish he got punched more in this movie, but I mean, so far he's been like half bitten by a shark and punched in the face. He definitely deserved both of these things, so pretty happy about that so far. Back on the boat, Lucas tells Richie like he shouldn't have told his girlfriend about all this, but they also didn't know about the tracker. So yeah, Lucas didn't know about the tracker being used as sort of a lure. And then Lucas says Richie has been like hiding this to steal the research or potentially start his own company or whatever. So they're just starting to turn on each other at this point. And honestly, Lucas might actually be right. I wouldn't put it past Richie to do this sort of shit either. And then back in the lab, Emma and her team are like, yeah, we got to report this thing. And so they go to try and do that, but apparently the internet is down, so they can't call anyone or whatever. So she tells Shaw to hold the fort down. We see Lucas and his men just outside with like this big metal case, and as they dive into the water and start swimming, it says explosives on it. So they're up to some shady shit. And then Shaw and Spin follow them with the drone sub, and we see them screw this box onto like some rock formation, which I'm now thinking that is probably just kind of like the bottom part of this island or nursery. I mean, either way, it's probably going to collapse this whole fucking island into the sea. And as soon as Shaw sees exactly what this box is on the screen, he says that he's got to go find Emma. And then Emma is checking on the wires for the communications equipment, and she's eventually ends up in the water, and so she's following it along the water, and then she walks along the docks trying to see where this goes, and then eventually we see that the line has been cut. So Lucas and his men have cut this line so they can't communicate with anybody. So Emma goes back and she's telling everybody and Shaw like what's going on and how like they can't let these sharks breed now, so like they have to stop these sharks and Lucas's men and whatnot. But Shaw interrupts her and is like, this box that they have is a fucking mine, like it's gonna blow off. And he says like her father and him used to use. So again, I don't know if they were I don't know what her dad did. It really doesn't matter. But basically when this thing goes off, the whole village is going down with it. So Emma storms off to confront Richie again, asking if he was like going to warn them about this or whatever, but he has no idea what she's talking about. So Lucas has basically gone to explode the island without talking to Richie about it or anything, obviously, because he doesn't care. He's basically, like I said, he's trying to cover his ass and the company's ass by getting rid of witnesses and all of that type of shit. And then Lucas appears behind her and Richie with what can only be described as if Nerf made a grenade launcher. That's what this thing looks like. It looks like a Nerf gun grenade launcher. But Lucas says they weren't sent there to benefit mankind. They were sent there to protect their stocks. Right. Yeah, because we don't, and to clean up the company's mess, because, we don't want to do the right thing and, like, warn people of potential hazards or whatever. This is also another common theme in the last, 3 movies we've watched for Attack of the Sequels month. Jurassic Shark 3, we had the oil rig company drilling, trying to cover their shit up. Shark Attack 3, we had the Apex Communications thing covering up their shit, knowing that there were Megs around, and now we have this. We've got a company that knows there's dangerous sharks in the water and are doing everything they can to cover it up. Very common themes, but I will say some of these movies were done better than the other ones. Shaw then points his Nerf launcher into the village and starts shooting at Shaw, and then as these mini explosives go off, they break the rope bridges, and then it ends up pouring gasoline all over one of the walkways, and he just keeps shooting and knocking buildings down and starting fires. And so Richie jumps in to try and stop him, but he's fucking useless against this man. You would think Richie would do at least a couple of push-ups in his life, but apparently not. Completely useless. And so Lucas just keeps firing at anyone he sees. So Lucas is about to shoot at Shaw, and then Emma kicks him in the fucking knee and makes a run for it. And then as she's running down this dock, Lucas fires, and she goes flying into the air and smashes down into the water. This was a legit stunt. They didn't do this CGI, or if they did, it's very impressive, but I'm pretty sure it's not. This looks like a legitimate stunt. It looked cool, and it was really well done. I just think it's been a while since I've seen, real stunts in some of these movies, because, some of the stunts we talked about last week in Shark Attack 3 weren't really stunts. It was people throwing themselves off a fucking boat, which, I'm sorry, most people could do. This thing, whoever this stunt woman or person was, flew up in the air a good 10 feet, and then came smashing down into the water, and it looked incredible. And during all this chaos, Spin and Maya are trapped inside a building as it starts to sink. So Shaw is going to go and try and rescue them while Emma is going to go and try and deal with the mine. Why these things are this way and not the other way when Shaw's the one with experience with mines, I don't know. Seems like a plot hole to me, but what do I know? So Emma starts getting into her scuba gear, and then Lucas sees this from the boat, and then he sends his men in after her. And then Richie is trying to convince him to stop and, like, kind of let this all go. I guess Richie says something like, well, yeah, you know what? I'd rather die than work with you. So he goes to the end of the boat to get ready to go and jump in and go see Emma. But as soon as he jumps off the boat, this fucking shark comes up, nabs him out of the air, and he's fucking dead. Fuck you, Richie. This was hilarious. It was so good. I think they were trying to do like the Sam Jackson thing with this one. Like he gives off this speech like, "No, I'm not going to go with you. I'm going to be heroic and blah blah blah." And then like the shark just eats him immediately. Fucking hilarious. And again, I'm just glad Richie's dead. Fuck you, Richie. So Emma sees this for a second. She's sad, but whatever. And so she gets into the water and she's scootering around while, again, Maya and Spin are trying to survive. And then Spin goes to leave the building to see if they can escape the sharks. And we don't really see much come from that because they just end up back in the building. I feel like they probably could have left at some point and they just kind of missed the opportunity, but whatever. Shaw is running around trying to get to these two when Lucas pops out of a hut. So yeah, I guess before Richie died, Lucas had said, like, we're going to go do one more tour around the village to get everybody, I guess, because otherwise, like, why is Lucas back on the island? So him and Shaw are fighting like men. So Lucas drops his fucking Nerf gun grenade launcher, and they just start duking it out. Spin returns to Maya, I guess. I don't know. I guess the shark has started chasing him in there now, but I felt like these two probably could have left. He starts chasing him in the building, so they get higher up in this building. Down below, Emma finally reaches the mine. She sees that it has the tracker on it that the kids have imprinted on because they think it's their mom. So again, they're just using the tracker to get them close to the mine, which is a good plan, except that they're also going to explode this whole village. So, like, why you had to do this? This just seems excessive, Lucas. My goodness. I mean, I know you're covering your ass and, like, covering your trail, but my god, this is just a lot. And then back with Maya and Spin, both of them are like confessing their love for each other now, and they make out, get all kissy kissy. And then Maya looks down and realizes that Spin is bleeding, and so they look down into the water saying, that was close. So naturally a shark jumps up and bites Spin, pulls him into the water. Again, it felt like this was maybe another attempt at the Sam Jackson moment, which I was going to say I was a little bit surprised by. I think I was both surprised by Richie and Spin's death in this, to be honest. I kind of didn't see it coming, even though probably should have. But it was very quick, fast, but looked good. When Richie was jumping off the boat into the shark, it looked okay. It didn't look amazing, but like the comedy of the moment kind of made up for that. Whereas this one, like, it was, I guess, not supposed to be as funny, but like it was still kind of funny. And I think they partially used a practical shark, or they at least did some practical effects to like maybe splash the water into his face or something, because it looked half decent again. And then, of course, Maya goes splashing down into the water, too. And then we see back out on the docks, Lucas tells one of his men to finish Shaw off as he's going to go, I don't know, do Lucas shit, I guess. So Shaw and this other dude start fighting, and a shark is jumping out of the water, about to get them, and they're both pinned on the ground, and so Shaw flips this guy on top of them, and then the shark bites this guy's head off and goes splashing into the water. Again, this was really funny, really well done. Some of the kills in this movie were fucking great. Like, this part was really well done. Just seeing this dude get decapitated, and then, like, Shaw's just left with this big bloody body on him. Fucking brilliant. Like I said, fucking go Shaw. Like, he is a badass motherfucker in this movie. Back inside the building, Maya is being circled by a shark as she's, like, hiding out in some, like, wardrobe or dresser thing. And Shaw is heading towards the building, and then he sees the building start to collapse, and then we just see this shark swim out with a bunch of blood coming out from underneath it. So we assume Maya has been eaten by the shark. Down below, just as Emma reaches the mine and is trying to pull the shark tracker off of it, one of Shaw's men, or Lucas's men, comes up from behind her and tries to stab her, but she manages to cut him and attract a shark to come and eat him. And I think this one was actually the great white that we saw earlier, because I'm pretty sure Emma calls it Sally, which is the name of the shark. So it wasn't one of the bull sharks, it was actually one of the great white sharks, and I guess it was sort of was like a nod to Emma, which there's a few moments in this where like Emma and this great white kind of have like this moment like, yeah, man, respect. It's a little bit weird and unnecessary, but it's only a couple of moments, so it's not really that annoying if you're not really into it. Emma gets the mine off of the rock, and she holds it out in front of her just as the two bull sharks start to approach, and they immediately just stop in front of her. And so they're kind of swimming around her, but they're keeping their distance as she's starting to swim. On the boat, Lucas has pulled up anchor and he's about to leave. Shaw tells her to disarm the mine, but she then asks for help to like get the sharks off her ass, because as soon as she disables it, like she's kind of screwed. So Shaw and this the wife of the local fisherman go to that body that Shaw had decapitated by the shark. It starts like pumping the blood out of him and then tosses him into the water, and the sharks immediately go up to it and just tear it into like bloody pieces or whatever. Again, obviously this was CGI, but not horrible looking, and just the comedy of it all is so good. It's very entertaining. I was very happy with it. And so Emma says thanks, and she says sorry, because she's going to do something he doesn't like. So she says bye, just like, yeah, I'm going to do something you don't like, see ya. So Lucas's boat starts to leave, and then Emma surfaces right in front of Shaw. So I'm not really sure why she said that, as if she wasn't going to make it back, because she just like immediately makes it back. She gets up onto the dock and she learns Maya and Spin are dead. And then Lucas stops the boat and he holds the detonator up looking at them, and, probably says some dumb shit. And then he pushes the button, and there's an explosion at the bottom of his boat, and his boat starts to sink, and, severely burning him as well. So yeah, basically she just took the mine and put it onto the boat, and took care of Lucas, because he fucking deserved it. Fuck you, Lucas. But the downside to this is they did have that third shark on the boat, so now that the boat has gone into the water, we see this third shark kind of get free and start swimming off with the other two. Shaw and the local woman start planning on leaving, but Emma says that they can't leave. They have to stop the sharks here and now, because they cannot be left to breed. So Emma pulls the beacon out and explains to Shaw that this beacon attracts the sharks, because they think it's their mother or whatever. So she wants to corral the sharks near what's left of the village and then kill them. Plain and simple. And so they use the drone to attract the sharks and lure them into the cove, but then the drone gets stuck on this fishing net. So Shaw goes in to untangle it, and he starts to cut it loose, but the sharks start swimming back to him right after he gets it loose. And as they're circling him, he pulls out a couple of those explosive rounds, and then both of the sharks go to attack him at the same time. And just as they do, he stabs both of them with these rounds, setting off a bloody mess of an explosion. So fucking good. Like Jaws style meaty blood explosion. This was such a badass death. Like, if you're gonna sacrifice yourself, like, this is how you fucking do it, man. God bless Shaw. Sweet Jesus. Yeah, this part was awesome though. This was so good. Just all like the blood, the explosion, Shaw's like badass, that is badass bravery in general, I guess. But yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. And so naturally, Emma starts crying, and as she is, Lucas's bloody ass comes out of the water and starts stabbing her. And so they start to struggle for a bit. He pushes her underwater to try and drown her, and then the local woman throws a spear at him. She misses, but it distracts him enough that Emma gets up and drives a knife like right into his chest, and he collapses in the water. But there's no time to celebrate, because there's still one shark left. So she's bleeding from her side, and she looks pretty pissed at this point. She's not having it today. She's had enough. So she watches the shark swim around, and then makes a swim for this waste management room, which is underwater, and it's basically a compactor. So she starts slapping the water to attract the shark and swims into this compactor, and it follows her in. She starts pushing this button as the shark is pushing its way further into this compactor, So she reaches her hand around. She says sorry to the shark because she doesn't really want to kill it, but she like kind of has to. Which I'm like, hey, mad respect, man. Seriously. Um, but yeah, so she starts putting the compactor down. But as it does, the compactor starts sinking into the water, and so she like kind of loses grip of the button. And the shark is still trying to get at her. And while I think most of this was CG, there may have been a couple of parts where they might have put in a practical shark. But for the most part, this looks really, really good. Yeah, so she's like kicking at the shark, keeps pushing the button, and then eventually it explodes under the pressure, leaving Emma in like this bloody trash can. And she's in her own little chum bucket, you could say. And the local woman gets her out of there and back onto the dock. And then she tells her she's crazy. And then they head off into, basically off into the sunset on a boat as dolphins play. And we can see the small village kind of sinking behind them. And then the great white shark comes up to the boat and almost gives Emma like a little nod, which was very weird. I'm like, we didn't need that. You could have cut this part right out. We already got that little moment where Sally saved her. You could have cut this part out, but fine, whatever. And then they see this small drawer thing or wardrobe floating, and out pops fucking Maya with a knife ready to stab them. But she doesn't stab them because she's like, oh, you're not sharks. Good call. But yeah, so she survives. So they get her all up on the boat. Everyone hugs and cries, and they're all happy. And that's the end of that. That's Deep Blue Sea 3. Overall, taking the Deep Blue Sea out of this is not a bad movie. I know a lot of people hate on it because it's, part of the Deep Blue Sea franchise. And I mean, yeah, it's not Deep Blue Sea, right? It's not as good as Deep Blue Sea, but it's very entertaining. The effects are well done. The acting is well done. Like, I was happy with all of this. The cinematography was great. Like, this is a really good looking movie. The underwater footage was well shot. The lead actor, Tanya Ramon, was great. Honestly, the only thing I really remember her from was she was in a few episodes of Malcolm in the Middle, and I don't know why I remember that of all things, but yeah, she was great in this movie, as well as everyone else, like, especially Shaw. Like, his character was just so fucking cool. We had a few practical shark effects, and I feel like a couple of times I thought they were practical, but they actually might have been CG. And again, there's still some questionable CGI in this movie, but the rest of the movie kept me engaged enough where I wasn't bothered by it. And the fact that I even questioned some of it, like, oh, was this CG or not, still, kind of says how well this movie looks. And they filmed this in Cape Town studios in South Africa, so they probably actually shot in the water, or at least near the ocean, which is fantastic. Overall, though, I'm giving this a 3.5 stars. This is a great movie. Just as soon as people see the title card, I think they're going to be like, what am I about to watch? Because the title card is awful. Just close your eyes when that comes up for like 3 seconds and then open them back up and everything will be fine. Because honestly, I was very happy with this movie, and I was actually pretty happy with a lot of the movies we watched this month. I think this has been like a solid month of movies. I don't think there was like necessarily a bad movie I watched. Like, Five-Headed Shark Attack was pretty goddamn entertaining. Jurassic Shark 3 had Sharkenstein. Incredible. Shark Attack 3, I mean, come on. If you don't realize how much I like that movie, go fucking listen to that episode, because I have an absolute blast with that movie every time I watch it. Oh, and I don't think I did poster expectations for this one because I'd seen it before. I think the only movie this month that we watched that I hadn't seen was Jurassic Shark 3. So all these other movies I had seen. But we'll get back into poster expectations when we get to movies I haven't seen yet. But yeah, 3.5 stars. I think every movie this month has been 3 or higher. So this is an awesome way to start the year off. So yeah, let's keep 2025 going. Remember, your Jaws 2025 episode for January is going to be on Patreon, and we're doing Orca, the killer whale. And if you want more Bucket of Chum, you can go to bucketofchumpodcast.com, or you can follow me on all of the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Slasher, Blue Sky, all of those. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. But for now, I will see you guys next time for even more Bucket of Chum.